Thank you. Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure to rise today to speak to Bill 6, the Education Prioritizing Literacy and Numeracy Amendment Act. I'm with my colleagues in opposition to this bill, and there's a few different reasons for that. So, I mean, as an Albertan, I used to be very proud that Alberta had the best public education system in the world. And as somebody who has gone through the public education system, and I like to think has become somewhat successful in life as an adult, I was quite proud of the public education system, and now I'm not. I think some things have happened under this UCP mismanagement in the education system that have really weakened our public education system, and public education is the great equalizer of society, Mr. Speaker. It is the foundation of what forms a good working society that contributes to community, that wants to be engaged, and that wants to work productively. And I think that we should be working very intentionally to strengthen our public education system. And kind of what's happened over the last few years is, you know, slowly education has been underfunded, and now we have the lowest funding per student in the country. But we also have a lot more people moving to Alberta, Mr. Speaker, and that exacerbates that problem. And in preparing and researching for this bill debate tonight, I kept going back to, like, if only we could have known, if only there were ways to know the path that we were on was, you know, not leading us to success. And the good news is, Mr. Speaker, there was ways we could have known. And actually, on this side of the House, we pointed that out several times, and I'll get into that in a minute. This bill is about creating standardized testing for kindergarten to grade 3. My colleagues have mentioned that, you know, it's not really about what parents and teachers are asking for. It's not about smaller class sizes and addressing classroom complexity, which teachers and parents have repeatedly requested supports to address. It's about testing kids from K to 3. And this bill gives the minister power to establish these tests and boards the responsibility to share those results with parents. And it legislates the implementation of testing for K to 3, but the tests themselves actually started a year ago. So we've had a year of these tests happening in schools, and so what do Albertans think about this idea of standardized tests for K to 3? Well, Mr. Speaker, they don't actually like it, so it's kind of funny that we're here debating it, because again, we're debating a piece of legislation that people are not asking for, but it's okay, we can still talk about it. So last year, when this announcement came out that there was going to be standardized tests for K to 3, people raised concerns at that time. The Alberta Teachers Association said you can't test your way out of underfunding, and that more supports are needed for classroom sizes and complexity, not tests, Tests to identify which students are falling behind. The minister had said at the time that these tests were to identify which students are falling behind. Well, that's great. Obviously, we should identify which students are falling behind, Mr. Speaker. But the reality is that teachers are already trained to do that. Teachers undergo several years of education, and they are prepared to go into their classroom, and providing they have a reasonable class size, they have the ability to spend time with their students and assess what reading level or literacy level they are at. So we don't need standardized tests for these youngest age groups because teachers are already trained to do that work. Another thing that was raised in 2024 when this came out was this idea of, like, what happens to the results when we have these standardized tests? Will there be more action, funding, supporting the children who do score lower and who need more supports? But this bill doesn't actually tie these standardized tests to any kind of increased funding or supports for that. So I kind of I'm asking myself, why? Like, why are we doing this if teachers don't want it and it doesn't feed into increased supports for the kids who need it the most? What are we doing here? Last year, in 2024, the teachers asked for smaller class sizes and resources to address complex needs. That they needed help to provide students with more individual attention. Mr. Speaker, that's what happens when we have smaller class sizes, is teachers actually have more time to get to know their students and give them the attention that they needed. Teachers have been asking for that for years. And yet this year, with other Bill 2 in the legislature, but even before that, we see this government's complete, what's the word I'm looking for? Reticence, stubbornness, inaction, like all of those things, just a complete unwillingness to recognize that what teachers are asking for is smaller class sizes and supports for classroom complexity. They're not asking for standardized tests, and they've been having those requests before this government for years, and yet somehow in question period this fall, I feel like several ministers have said how surprised they were. They gave the teachers everything they wanted, and they still chose to strike. It's not a surprise, Mr. Speaker. It took me 3 seconds on Google to find newspaper articles where teachers are asking for smaller class sizes and supports to address classroom complexity. In 2019, teachers were upset about the UCP government bringing back standardized tests for grade 3. 2019. So this government has had 6 years, Mr. Speaker, to figure out a solution that wasn't Bill 6. And in 6 years, they just kept going, no, we're going to do standardized tests for K-3. It's like, who could have known, Mr. Speaker? Oh, wait, everybody, because the teachers have been saying it repeatedly for 6 years. So why in 2019 did teachers not want standardized tests, Mr. Speaker? Well, because standardized tests for K-3 stress the system, they stress teachers, students, and parents. The student learning assessments that were in place in 2014 were working for this age group. So it's not about saying we don't want to assess K-3 students. We absolutely do. But the student learning assessments that were put in place in 2014 were voluntary. They were optional, and they focused on individual students. It was a teacher's way of digging deeper into how an individual student might be learning or struggling or coping with school. The results from those student learning assessments were not reported widely. It was basically data for parents and teachers only. So it was really about serving the children. It was about finding out which children were having the hardest time with literacy or other aspects of being in school at that age, and working with the parents to find solutions to serve those children. I kept thinking about my school experience and my daughters while I was thinking about this bill. And I have 2 daughters, and they're very, very different from each other, and I would say that they are both very incredibly smart, and not just because I'm going to show them this clip later, but my girls are amazing, Mr. Speaker, but they are very different, and one of them does very well with tests. She thrives in this environment where she's forced to put her knowledge down on paper and respond in a test situation. My other daughter hates tests and has a really, really hard time with tests. And as a parent, I feel like it was heartbreaking sometimes to watch her come home with tests that her grades were not great, but it wasn't a reflection of her knowledge because she's smart and amazing and capable. But it's the situation of forcing her to sit in a desk and write a test that she struggled with. And when I think about standardized testing for K-3 children, these are little kids, Mr. Speaker. We want their school experience to be fun. We want learning to be fun. We want to foster this curiosity in these youngest age groups so that when they are older and they're faced with tests, they have some confidence and they know that they're capable of learning and they're capable of sharing that knowledge with others, which is really what a test is. And so it kind of breaks my heart a little bit, Mr. Speaker, to think that we might be subjecting this youngest age cohort in school to these really high stress situations where they may come out of it feeling not smart or feeling less adequate or feeling less than. And what will that do to their curiosity and their passion for learning over the long term? Because it would be heartbreaking if any child between the ages of kindergarten to grade 3 somehow came away from a standardized test feeling that they were inadequate and were not capable of learning and keeping up to their peers. And that's what the data shows, Mr. Speaker, that these tests are problematic for students because it can reduce their self-esteem by introducing too much pressure to children who are too young to handle it. We don't want that for our children. We don't want kids to get stressed and anxious when they're 6 years old because they don't know how to answer a question. And these standardized tests have disproportionate impact on vulnerable kids or kids with disabilities, as my colleague from Lethbridge West was saying. So we need better screening tools that actually serve the children, Mr. Speaker, and standardized tests for K-3 are not that. And it's interesting because here on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we've actually had 2 private members' bills that do get to the heart of this, and they have both been voted down by this UCP government. So one was a psychoeducational assessments brought forward by my colleague last year from Calgary Edgemont, and that was really about helping teachers and parents have supports to do some educational assessments of children to figure out if they did have special needs or required additional supports. The UCP voted that down. We also had a private member's bill that was really about bringing back the need to measure class sizes and class complexity and report on that publicly. And again, the UCP voted that down, Mr. Speaker. But who could have foreseen that those bills would be needed? We did. We did, over here. We had these great ideas, and this government said no. And now what are they doing? They've got a special cabinet committee to measure class sizes and classroom complexity and report it. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? We could have already started that data collection over a year ago if the UCP would have just voted in support of the private members' bills that we put forward. For teachers, these bills, this standardized testing creates increased administrative time for people who are already feeling very overworked and overwhelmed by their workload. A standardized test can introduce up to 5 hours of time per test, or 3 to 5 instructional days annually. This isn't solving teachers' problems, Mr. Speaker, it's exacerbating them. Teachers want smaller class sizes and supports for classroom complexity, and this bill does not do that. And when this government has had the opportunity to vote in support of bills that would help address these issues brought forward by this side of the House, they have said no every single time. And so Albertans, Mr. Speaker, they want a forward-thinking government, and there's one on this side of the House. That side of the House is full of ministers who are reacting and who are surprised, and who could have known that classroom size and classroom complexity was going to be such a big deal? Everybody, Mr. Speaker, everybody knew. The teachers have been talking about it for literally 6 years. So what now? Well, this bill comes weeks after the largest labour strike in Alberta history, and then 51,000 teachers being ordered back to work to the same classrooms with the same inadequate supports that caused them to strike in the first place. What are we doing, Mr. Speaker? Because we're definitely not solving the problems that people are coming forward with. This bill will identify students that are struggling. Great. I mean, teachers could already do that. But then what? This government doesn't have a history of closing the loop on any of this information, Mr. Speaker. We have all kinds of examples in my shadow ministry portfolio, even of environment, where we're monitoring and collecting data all over the place. And is that data and monitoring changing how things are done on the ground? No. So what's going to happen to these tests? What are we going to do with these results? Are we actually going to find supports to help these students achieve and be the best Albertans that they can be? Is there money to support increasing that? 3,000 teachers and 1,500 educational assistants over 3 years won't be enough to address this gap, Mr. Speaker. The UCP could apparently allocate $11 million to address the needs identified that come from this test. And if that's true, Mr. Speaker, if there is indeed $11 million floating around to address these needs, why don't we just do it right now? The teachers know the students that need support. We know we need more educational assistants. We need more teachers. Why don't we just do it now? These tests are unnecessary. Let's serve the people, Mr. Speaker. The teachers already know the needs, and they've communicated that. Let's just do what they need.